All right, today I'm going to be talking about some basic gear you need to get started recording at home. The reason I wanted to do this video is because I've had conversations with friends about this recently, and I just feel like you don't really need that much stuff to get started. I think it can be a bit overwhelming reading blogs and looking at other videos and learning about different interfaces and microphones and studio monitors and acoustic treatment and so many different odds and ends. But I boiled it down to basically 5 things I think are crucial to get started. And of course you can build from there. But I wanted to start with something simple and affordable. I'm a firm believer that you don't need that much stuff to get started. So I'm gonna jump into it, starting first with laptop. So obviously, to record music these days, you're going to want something to record into. It's probably not going to be a tape machine, but you probably have a laptop, hopefully. I would say use whatever you have, unless it is extremely slow and deficient. To start off with, you're not really going to need crazy specs on your computer just to do basic recording. As you get more advanced in mixing, then it might be time to look at upgrading when you start kind of hitting a brick wall with your CPU usage. But my first recommendation would be just to use what you have ideally. If you're needing to get a new computer, probably 16 gigs of RAM at least, a processor that has, at least 4 cores, something relatively new. But beyond that, it's up to you. And ultimately, most, mid-tier laptops can handle recording just fine. All right, the next item that you're going to need is an audio interface. So this is the device that is going to serve 2 different purposes for you. It's going to be your analog to digital conversion. So taking an analog signal, say from a microphone or a guitar or keyboard, converting it into a digital signal that your computer can use. The second purpose is going to be preamps. So you're also going to need to be able to amplify that signal to a usable level to work with. Some options for getting an audio interface that I would recommend are the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. So this means it has 2 inputs, 2 preamps, 2 outputs. This is the interface that I started with. I had for 5+ years. It's pretty much standard out there as something that's cheap and still quality and has been around forever, and I think they're on the 3rd generation of it. So definitely check that out. The next I would recommend is an Audient ID14. I haven't personally used this, but they have a great reputation for quality, and honestly, something I would have considered if I even knew about Audient back when I started recording. The next option that you could look at is the new Universal Audio Volt series interface. So these are brand new and super exciting. I'm a user of Universal Audio. I have a twin back here, the Apollo Twin. Those are a little bit pricey, and so it's really exciting that Universal Audio has made an even more affordable option that has fantastic preamps and a built-in compressor, which is pretty unique for that price point, I would say. So definitely check that out as well. I think sticking with something that's USB bus powered is going to be probably more the affordable options to get started with. All right, the next thing you're going to need to record at home is a pair of good headphones. Typically, I would say you need a pair of open back headphones for mixing and a pair of closed back headphones for tracking. And the reasoning for that is because open back headphones have a very open, neutral sound, almost like you're listening to speakers in a room. But the issue with them is that they also bleed sound into the room, so they're not going to be good for recording. So I would say if you're needing to stay on a tight budget, just get a quality pair of closed-backed headphones that you can use for both tracking and mixing. There's some great options for those. I have the Sennheiser HD 280 Pros. Another great option is the Sony MDR 7506 headphones. I've used those in the past. They work great. Now, I know typically people will say you need studio monitors for mixing and that you shouldn't mix on headphones, but honestly, the first 5 years of recording and mixing, I was just using headphones because I couldn't afford big studio monitors and I didn't have that much space. So honestly, it maybe not be the most ideal situation, but you can totally mix with headphones and get great results. It's all a matter of having good perspective. I would say also using reference tracks before you start mixing. Listen to some well-recorded music that's in the lane of what you're doing, and get accustomed to the headphones by referencing that material before you jump into your mix. The next thing you're going to need for recording at home is a good microphone. So what I would recommend is getting either a large diaphragm condenser, like this. This is an MXL 990 or a dynamic microphone. Now, I did the MXL 990 first. I've since customized it. That's why it doesn't look like an MXL 990. But I used it, as is for 5+ years, and it served me great. There's also the Rode NT1A that's super affordable, or the Audio Technica AT 2020. The great thing about these large diaphragm condensers is they pick up a lot of detail. So if you're recording acoustic guitar or vocals, they're going to give you kind of a sense of airiness and clarity that you won't get with a dynamic microphone like the Shure SM57 that I'm holding here. Now, these are amazing for recording guitar amps. They can also be great for recording acoustic guitars and vocals as well, but they can lack low frequency and high frequency detail, and you might need to treat them a little bit differently in the mix, and it might be a little bit harder to get the sound you're going for as a result. But they're still totally usable, very, durable, very cheap. So I wouldn't discount them at all. I would just say a large diaphragm condenser might be less of a headache if you're going to be mainly doing vocals and acoustic guitar and stuff like that. All right, the fifth thing that you're going to need to record at home is software. You're going to need something to record into and to be able to mix your audio in. As you can see, I'm running Logic Pro behind me. I'm a Mac user, so it was a very natural progression for me to go from using GarageBand, which is free, to Logic, which is kind of the older brother to GarageBand. And I could sing Logic's praises all day because they keep adding new plugins and new software instruments and features that just keep getting better and better. I've only made one investment buying it initially. I haven't had to pay anything else since, but I've gotten so much more value out of it as the years go on. If you're not a Mac user, Ableton is an incredible program as well. It can get expensive as you get the more full-featured iterations of Ableton, but you get a ton of amazing instruments and plugins, and the workflow is incredible. So I would definitely recommend Ableton. If you're just needing something free, Reaper is amazing. And I know a lot of people that swear by it, and they love it. They've used it for years, and it keeps getting improved. And yeah, you can't beat free. So no reason not to get it and try it, right? All right, one more thing that you might need for recording at home is a MIDI controller. I didn't include it in the top 5 things because honestly, it depends on what you plan on doing and what kind of music you want to make. But a MIDI controller is super helpful. If you're planning on using virtual instruments in your music, you're going to need one. I would recommend the Akai Mini MPK MIDI controller. It's what I used for a super long time, so I'm partial to it. But it has drum pads. It has 25 keys. You can do a lot with it. All right, so those are the 5 things that I would recommend to get started recording. Obviously, from there, you can upgrade. You can look at getting better microphones. You can get studio monitors. You can get acoustic treatment for your room. But the main thing when you're starting out is just to start making music. So use whatever you have, whatever you can afford, get some bare essentials and just start making music. Honestly, a lot of the mixing clients that I've had have very humble setups where they might just have a dynamic microphone and a really basic interface, and yet they're creating whole albums with that. And I'm honestly impressed with the results. Not because it's the best gear in the world, but because the songs are compelling and the performances are good and the equipment is good enough to convey that. There's tons of great records that have literally just been made with the SM57. Like Sufjan Stevens, look up some of his old stuff and the way that he recorded. It's insane. Or Bon Iver, or, numerous others. So your gear isn't going to make or break your recording necessarily. It's just using it well and being creative with it. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully that was helpful to you. If you want more recording tips and mixing tips, subscribe. This is my first video of many that I'm going to be posting on the channel. If you want to check out my mixing and producing work, you can go to briankfisher.com. I'm accepting new clients for remote mixing and producing as well. If you'd like to work together, just hit me up through my website. Thanks for tuning in.